There is a soup that the modern world has forgotten. You won't find it on any restaurant menu. You won't see it in any wellness magazine. And yet, this soup fed entire generations of people who lived past 90, past 100, into ages most of us cannot imagine reaching today. It was simmered in clay pots before the first hospital was ever built, before the first pharmacy ever opened its doors, before anyone had ever heard the word vitamin. And here's what nobody is telling you. This humble soup, made from ingredients that cost almost nothing, contains more bioavailable vitamins and minerals than most multivitamin tablets you can buy at your local pharmacy. More than the expensive ones. More than the ones with the gold labels and the fancy names. A single bowl delivers iron, folate, magnesium, potassium, B vitamins, antioxidants, and protein in forms your body actually recognizes and absorbs. And Jesus of Nazareth ate this soup. His disciples ate this soup. The mothers of ancient Israel fed this soup to their children from the time they could hold a spoon. But I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet, because first you need to understand where it came from and why it disappeared. Stay with me. To understand this soup, we have to go back. Not hundreds of years, not 1,000, thousands of years. Picture the land of Israel in the time of the prophets. Small villages tucked into the hills of Judea and Galilee. Stone houses with low doorways. A clay oven in the corner of every home. A fire that never fully went out because the morning cooking began before the stars had even faded. And in almost every one of those homes, a pot was simmering. A round clay pot blackened on the outside from years of use, filled with something dark and fragrant that had been cooking slowly since before dawn. It wasn't a meal prepared in a hurry. It wasn't something you threw together because you were starving. It was something a woman started in the early hours and let cook low and slow while she did everything else her day demanded. She drew water from the well. She ground grain between two stones. She tended to her children. She washed clothes in the stream. And all the while, that pot was doing its quiet, sacred work on the fire. By the time the sun was high, the whole house smelled like earth and herbs and something deep enough to taste in the air. Now, the people who ate this soup weren't lucky. They weren't blessed with some secret genetic advantage. They didn't have gyms or supplement stores or personal trainers or annual physicals. What they had was a soup. A soup they ate almost every single day of their lives. A soup that started with one humble legume and a few bitter herbs growing along the roadsides. And those people, despite backbreaking labor, despite brutal heat, despite wars and famines and plagues that tore through the ancient world, produced individuals who lived remarkably long lives. Even in the time of Jesus, when the average life expectancy across the Roman Empire was somewhere around 35, the sages and the shepherds and the faithful mothers of the Galilean hills routinely lived into their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Their teeth were intact. Their minds were clear. Their hands still worked. They didn't fade slowly into decades of illness the way so many of us do now. They lived, and then they died, usually quickly, after a long, full, productive life. What was their secret? Part of it was the simple rhythm of walking everywhere, working with their hands, sleeping when the sun went down. But a huge part of it was what they ate. And the soup at the center of that diet, the soup that appeared in almost every kitchen, from the poorest shepherd's hut to the wealthiest merchant's table, was a lentil soup. Not the weak, watery lentil soup in a can, not the lentil soup served in a bowl at a trendy restaurant. A dense, dark, herb-heavy, slow-cooked lentil soup that was more medicine than meal. The kind of soup the book of Genesis itself makes famous. Because this is the soup that Jacob cooked, the soup Esau traded his entire birthright for in Genesis 25. Esau came in from the fields, exhausted and starving, and caught the smell of something so rich and nourishing that he was willing to give up his future inheritance for a single bowl. That's how good it was. That's how deep it hit the body, a man trading everything for a bowl of soup. Now think about that for a second. In all of Scripture, of all the foods that could have been used as the pivot point in that story, the writer chose lentil soup. Not bread, not meat, not wine, lentil soup. Because everyone who read those words in the ancient world understood exactly what Esau was tasting. They had tasted it themselves. They had stood over their own pots of it. They had watched their own mother stir it with a wooden spoon. They knew the smell. They knew the warmth. They knew the way it filled you from the inside out in a way almost nothing else could. And they knew the effect it had on the body over years of daily eating. Strong bones, clear eyes, steady hands, long memory. So if this soup was so powerful, so nourishing, so central to the lives of ordinary people for thousands of years, why has it disappeared from our tables? The answer is the same as it always is. When industrial food production took over in the last century, everything changed. Convenience replaced tradition. Cans replaced clay pots. Meals that took hours were replaced by meals that took minutes. Canned lentil soup strips away the bitter herbs that gave the original its medicinal punch. It boils out the delicate vitamins that require low, slow heat to remain intact. It adds sugar and salt and preservatives that damage the very systems the original soup was designed to nourish. What ends up in that can is a shadow of the real thing. A cheap imitation that carries the name but none of the power. And so people eat canned lentil soup for a year or two, notice no difference in their health, and conclude that lentils must be overrated. They never realize they've never actually eaten the real soup at all. For decades, nobody talked about lentils with the seriousness they deserved, until scientists began to actually analyze what a real, traditional, slow-cooked lentil soup delivers to the human body. And the results were almost hard to believe. A single serving of properly prepared lentil soup contains approximately 90% of your daily folate, 40% of your iron, a third of your magnesium, significant amounts of potassium, zinc, and B vitamins, complete protein when paired with a small amount of grain, and more fiber than most people consume in an entire day. But here's what makes it extraordinary. Those nutrients are in their natural form, bound to real food, accompanied by the cofactors your body needs to absorb them properly. Multivitamin pills give you isolated nutrients. Your body struggles to use them. Studies have repeatedly shown that the bioavailability of vitamins from whole foods is dramatically higher than from synthetic supplements. When you take a folate pill, your body absorbs a fraction. When you eat lentils, the folate comes with the enzymes, the minerals, and the fiber that help your gut absorb almost all of it. A bowl of real lentil soup is not just a meal, it is a multivitamin your body actually recognizes. Now imagine adding to those lentils the bitter herbs that grew along every roadside in ancient Israel. Dandelion greens, watercress, wild endive, the same bitter herbs the Israelites ate at the Passover as commanded in Exodus 12. Those herbs aren't just symbolic, they're medicinal. Bitter greens stimulate the liver, improve digestion, provide additional vitamins A, C, and K, and deliver antioxidants that protect every cell in your body from oxidative damage. Add garlic, which the Israelites wept for when they left Egypt. Add onions, add a splash of wine vinegar, which appears throughout the Bible as a daily drink. Add olive oil, the oil of kings. And what you have is not a soup, it's a pharmacy in a bowl. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a small stone house in a village near the Sea of Galilee. The morning is just beginning. A woman is already awake, already working. She has gathered the lentils from a clay jar in the corner where she stores the year's harvest. She has rinsed them in cool water from a bowl. She has placed them in her round black pot with several cups of water from the morning's first drawing at the well. She adds a handful of chopped onions. She crushes 3 cloves of garlic with the flat of a knife and drops them in whole. She pours in a generous stream of olive oil from the small clay jug on her shelf. She tears a handful of wild herbs she picked that morning at the edge of the path, thyme, oregano, and a few bitter dandelion greens that give the soup its depth. She adds a pinch of sea salt. She stirs it slowly with a wooden spoon, and then she sets the pot on a low fire and walks away to live the rest of her day. By the time her husband comes home from the fields, by the time her children come in from playing, by the time the sun begins to slip behind the hills, that soup has cooked for hours. The lentils have broken down into a thick, dark, creamy body. The herbs have released every bit of their medicine into the broth. The garlic has mellowed into sweetness. The olive oil has emulsified into something rich and golden. The whole house smells like the memory of every meal her mother ever cooked. She ladles it into simple clay bowls. She tears a piece of barley bread for dipping. She places it in front of her family without ceremony because this is just what dinner looks like. But what she is feeding them is not ordinary. She is feeding them the soup that will keep them strong for decades. She is feeding them the soup that made the ancient world last. This is the soup of the Bible, the real one, the one nobody tells you about, the one that delivers everything a modern multivitamin promises and cannot deliver. And today, right now, you can make it in your own kitchen. And now I want to give you something special. I want to give you the recipe as close to the original as we can possibly get. Researched, tested, and brought back to life using ingredients you can find at any grocery store today. This is the soup of the ancients, the soup of Galilee, the soup Esau traded his birthright for, and you're going to make it in your own kitchen. Here's what you'll need. 2 cups of whole brown or red lentils, not the quick cooking split kind. Whole lentils that still hold their structure and their nutrient density. Rinse them in cool water before using. 1 large onion, finely chopped, the way every meal in the ancient world began. 4 to 6 cloves of garlic, not 1 or 2 timid cloves. 4 to 6, the way the people of the Bible used it. 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, cold-pressed, the oil that anointed kings. 8 cups of water or bone broth if you have it. Water works beautifully. Bone broth adds another layer of minerals. Ancient cooks would have included whenever they had leftover bones. A generous handful of bitter greens, dandelion leaves if you can find them. Watercress. Arugula works if bitter greens are hard to source. This is the ingredient most modern versions leave out, and it's the one that makes all the difference. 2 tablespoons of fresh chopped thyme or 1 tablespoon dried. Oregano. Fresh is best. Dried works. 1 bay leaf. Bay laurel grew throughout the biblical landscape. 1 teaspoon of ground cumin. Cumin was mentioned by Jesus himself. Don't leave it out. Half a teaspoon of ground coriander, the seed God used to describe manna. 1 teaspoon of sea salt, not table salt, sea salt, the kind that still carries minerals. A pinch of black pepper, 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, added at the very end. This is what the ancient world called Pascha, when diluted, and it brightens everything. Optional but transformative. A drizzle of extra virgin olive oil on top when serving. Yes, you already added olive oil to the pot. Add more on top. This is how the ancient world did it, and you will understand why the first time you taste it. Now, here's what you do, and take your time with this. This soup wants to be cooked slowly. Rushing it robs it of its power. Heat the olive oil in a large, heavy pot over medium-low heat. Add the chopped onion and cook gently for about 8 to 10 minutes until soft, translucent, and slightly golden. Do not brown them. You want sweetness, not caramelization. Add the garlic, cumin, and coriander. Stir for about 30 seconds until fragrant. Your kitchen will suddenly smell like somewhere 2,000 years away. Add the rinsed lentils. Stir them in the oil and onions for a minute so they absorb the flavor. Pour in the water or broth. Add the bay leaf, thyme, and a little salt. Bring everything to a boil, then immediately reduce the heat to the lowest possible simmer. Cover partially and let it cook slowly for at least 1 hour, preferably 90 minutes. The longer it cooks, the deeper it becomes. The lentils will break down naturally. The liquid will thicken. The flavors will marry into something ancient. In the last 10 minutes of cooking, add the bitter greens. Let them wilt into the soup and release their bitterness into the broth. When the soup is done, remove the bay leaf. Taste it. Adjust the salt. Add the pepper. Stir in the red wine. Vinegar. That final acidic note wakes everything up. Ladle it into bowls. Drizzle a little extra olive oil on top of each bowl. Tear a piece of dense whole grain bread to dip into it. And taste it slowly. That first spoonful is not just lunch. It's the exact meal Jesus would have recognized. It's the exact meal that kept the ancient world alive. It's every nutrient your body has been asking for in a form your body actually knows how to use. We live in a world that's convinced the answer to health is in a bottle on a shelf. We spend over $50 billion a year on supplements that most studies show provide marginal benefit at best. We swallow pills that our bodies barely absorb, while ignoring the meals that could give us everything we need in a single bowl. The people of the Bible had no multivitamins. They had soup. Real soup made from real ingredients grown from real soil. And they lived, they worked, they raised families, they endured. And many of them endured far longer than we give them credit for. Maybe that was never an accident. So the next time someone tells you to buy another bottle of pills, smile and make this soup instead. The soup of the ancients. The soup Jacob simmered in a pot. The soup Esau traded his birthright for. The soup that fed a civilization through centuries of hardship and hope. It has been waiting for you for 3,000 years, and now you have it. If something clicked today, if these stories feel a little more real, a little more alive than they did before, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone at your table, a friend, a family member, someone who needs to be reminded that the old ways still have something to teach us. And if you want to keep walking through the Bible like this, through the kitchens and the fields and the forgotten corners that most people walk right past, subscribe to the Biblical Kitchen and hit the bell. Every week, we pull up a chair and look for what's been hiding in plain sight all along. The table is set. Come sit down.